Why do you think a book on Christian nationalism is needed right now?
Well, I think, there's a lot of books on Christian nationalism already. um, but I think it's important because one, Christian nationalism is actively trying to take control of the country. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And I think a lot of people in the church that espouse Christian nationalism also don't realize it. Because that's kind of the huge reason why I wrote my book, which is shameless plug, called Star-Spangled Jesus, Leaving Christian Nationalism and Finding a True Faith, is because I was a Christian nationalist, but I didn't know that I was. And because so much of American evangelicalism, the faith is very intertwined with the political ideology, so much so that it can be hard to separate the two. And so I think the book's needed because there's a lot of books and just commentary on Christian nationalism from a very academic, factual, historical, like, this is what happens. These are the stats. Here's data. And that's all needed and good too. But my book and kind of why I speak on Christian nationalism is to kind of, pull back the curtain and see, like, how do people get sucked up into Christian nationalism, and what's the mindset, and what were things that made me change? And I mean, I was very, very, very in it. So, and now I'm not.
You weren't faking.
No. Yeah, I was not faking. Despite some people claim that I was never, you were never.
I don't know. I was reading some stuff. I don't know. It's possible. No, I resonate with your book a lot. We obviously grew up kind of different religiously, both fundamentalist in our own ways, but I grew up in that kind of independent fundamental Baptist world. But the part of your book that really hit me in the emotions last night was at the very, very end of the book, when you're talking about this idea that people think you just flip a switch and it's easy to just switch sides. And now I'm going to be this like woke liberal, fill in the blank with all the names and the smears that get thrown out. And it's such a long, harrowing journey to realize what you're in and going through the process of getting out and then like kind of course correcting. I was curious from a content creation standpoint, because this is something I think about myself. When did you know you were ready to put pen to paper and kind of, because a book has a sense of permanence to it, right? Like, I'm going to write this out. This is my thoughts on it. How did you know you were far enough in the journey to where you're not going to look back in 2 years and go, oh shoot, I was still in this lane, I wasn't quite done with my metamorphosis just yet.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I'm probably not done with my metamorphosis anyway. Like,
hopefully none of us are, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think we're all constantly changing. Or we should be, when we get new information, we should be willing to change our mind. But I would say it kind of just happened. It wasn't a conscious, like, oh, I am ready now. I had been on TikTok, was really how this all started in 2020 during the pandemic when we're all stuck at home. And before that, in 2016, I started talking on like my personal Facebook page, just really thinking out loud and just being like, hey, why are we all liking Trump, fellow Christians? Like, really? Is this our guy? Which I was a never Trumper. So they already didn't like me from that. But it got really frustrating and I felt alone because for whatever reason on Facebook, my friends, which was a lot of like my dad's ministry friends and people that I grew up with in the church, they, it was just really frustrating to have this conversation with them over and over and over again. Like, they weren't hearing me. And what they were saying did not make sense. Oh, Trump's God's chosen or whatever it was. And I just felt really alone. And like, I was constantly being gaslit. And, I literally would think, am I the crazy one? Am I the one getting this wrong? Because there wasn't like this huge deconstruction movement that I was aware of at that point. And so when I got on TikTok in 2020, I made one video. It was in May of that year. That was basically, it was to a trend at the time, but basically the message was, when you're a Christian who doesn't like Trump, you get kicked out of the club. And it went it was like my most viral video yet. It was my first one to get almost 1 million views. And it was full of like 1,000+ comments of people being like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. And that was kind of when I started to feel this boldness, because I knew, oh no, it's not me. I'm not the crazy one. Like, my instincts and what I'm feeling inside are valid. And so that kind of gave me the courage to keep posting about stuff. And I typically did it in a humorous way, because humor is how I cope so I don't cry. And so then I did that for several years, and then I got the opportunity someone asked me to write a book. And my spouse Beecher was always like, you have the craziest story. Like, people don't believe your background. You should write a book. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I think having those few years kind of deconstructing out loud on TikTok or on the internet gave me the courage of like, well, the internet's forever. Might as well put it in a book that's also forever.